Shocking truth, what childbirth in medieval times reveals about our dark past must see. In the murky shadows of history, where secrets festered like old wounds, the tale of childbirth in medieval times unfolds a surreptitious drama steeped in dread and revelation. There is something profoundly unsettling about knowing that life began even with the promise of joy amidst the jagged edges of pain and peril. In darkened chambers lit by sputtering candles, women braved the throes of labor, faces contorted in anguish, hearts racing as they crossed the threshold between life and death. The very air buzzed with tension, thick like a storm cloud about to burst. In those nights, the cries of newborns mingled with the wails of mothers. What choice did they have, bound by a cycle of suffering and survival, tethered relentlessly to their fates? The belief in ancient spirits lingered yet darker than any ritual, the specters of superstition danced around the flickering light. Midwives, dubbed the wise women, bore the weight of unfathomable secrets, their hands knowing the bruise beneath skin, the healing herbs that could save, or the spells that could condemn. How could a practice so vital to humanity also be shrouded in such mystery and fear? And as lifetimes crumbled amidst jagged edges of life and loss, there were murmurs of betrayal, a child born deformed or lifeless whispered doom upon the family. Neighbors would cast suspicious glances, judging not just the birth but the very blood that ran through veins. What darkness lived in the hearts of those who bore these marks? Could ancient sin seep through generations, infecting the innocent in their cribs? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As tensions rose, stories of witchcraft and betrayal circulated like wildfire, igniting fear and suspicion in close-knit villages. The days bled into nights, each one pregnant with the promise of births yet unclaimed. And in moments of respite, when a mother found her child cradled in her arms, whispers lingered in the air, cloaked in both hope and trepidation. With every flicker of candlelight, a glimmer of a hidden truth pulsed beneath the surface. What pull did the past have on the present? What curses were hidden in their laughter? As the legacy of birth caught the breath of generations, it stirred something deep down in the soil, something that begged to be discovered. What revelations awaited in the shadows? What might loom in the old tomes, waiting to expose the raw truth of life and death? The air hung heavy with unspoken fears as small villages lay cloaked in an eerie silence. Shadows crept along the cobblestone streets, whispering tales of births that turned to burials, of mothers lost in the agony of creation. It was during one of these stormy nights, when electricity crackled in the air, that a new life was ushered into existence, sparking uncertainty among the onlookers. In the dim candlelight of a cramped home, Margaret, a village midwife known for her knowledge of both healing and harrowing crafts, rushed to aid a laboring woman named Alara. The atmosphere thickened as the air grew still, save for Alara's ragged breaths and the distant howl of the wind. There were murmurs about Alara's family, a history tainted with misfortune, marked by the gaze of those who believed in an ancestral curse, a darkness woven into their very being. As Margaret helped Alara through the grueling contractions, a sense of urgency consumed her. Something was different about this birth. The candles flickered ominously, casting dancing shadows that felt alive, watching. An uneasy tension gripped Margaret's heart. She had never felt this way during a birth before. Just then, an otherworldly scream echoed, ripping through the night. The sound spiraled into the depths of Margaret's mind, urging her to recall the stories of those who came before her, who had succumbed to the scourge of evil in the midst of birth. What transpired next was beyond any fear or conjured nightmare. The moment Alara pushed, the room grew colder, as if the very essence of life was being drawn out. A cry rang through. The infant's wail was a piercing siren, echoing in Margaret's ears. But it was not the sound that chilled her, it was the sight. The child emerged not whole, but a creature formed of shadows, embers, and something sinister, recoiling from the light. A gasp escaped Margaret's lips as her hands trembled, scared of what had taken place. Around her, villagers gathered, their eyes wide with disbelief and horror. Whispers erupted, conspiracy seeping into their hearts. Heads turned, fingers pointed, and the air thickened with accusations of witchcraft. They believed the baby was an omen, proof that the darkness ran deep within Alara's bloodline. As the villagers rumbled, a shroud of fear began to blanket the cottage. It was a fear rooted in the ancient tales of betrayal and vengeance, stories of those who dared birth the unholy. Margaret's mind raced, fragments of legends flooding back. Had she unknowingly welcomed a curse into the world? She could feel the weight of the onlookers' judgment. What was she to do? Protect the innocent child, or heed the cries of a superstitious crowd thirsting for answers? In the ensuing chaos, Alara's voice broke through, shrill and desperate. The cycle must be broken. You have to believe me. Her plea hung in the air, trembling like the candles before snuffing out. Eyes narrowed, doubts deepened. The urgency of the moment pressed against Margaret's chest. Was there a chance to alter fate, or had she sealed the family's destiny with a mere flick of fate's cruel wrist? As the night grew darker and storms brewed on the horizon, tension soared. Margaret felt time slipping through her fingers. Everything felt precarious. What was truly at stake? Would the truth emerge from the darkness, entangled in the roots of ancient sins, or would this night descend into an abyss of fears and condemnation? The villagers would decide. The weight of a lineage, the shadows of choice, and the cries of the innocent danced in an unholy marriage. Would they unravel the web of destiny woven long before their time, or seal their fates forever intertwined? What was the price of silence? And deep within the darkness, what surprises still lay waiting to ignite the chaos? The air trembled with expectation. The chaos swirled around Margaret like a storm, heavy and unyielding. The fear in the villagers' eyes was palpable, cutting through the room like a blade. The child, the creature, had stolen their breath, and now it was their indignation that filled the space. It was confusion and accusation melded into one. As Margaret looked from Alara to the twisted mass that was the baby, her mind raced. What to do? Witchcraft. Someone shouted from the back, voice razor sharp. A ripple of agreement surged through the crowd, like a wave crashing against the shore. Margaret's gut twisted, the word was lit like a match in dry hay. Witchcraft wasn't just a term. It was a death sentence. No! Alara cried, collapsing back against her bed, her face pale beneath the sweat. You're wrong. You don't understand. But we do, a villager spat, stepping forward. His face was twisted in anger, lips curling as he spoke. We know the curses your family carries. This is your price, Alara. Margaret stepped closer, eyes darting between the gathering storm of hatred and the frail woman before her. Desperation clawed at her throat. Wait, stop! She shouted, voice trembling but firm. We cannot act out of fear. This child, she's a monster. A woman wailed, clutching her child as if to protect it from the very air that surrounded them. Eyes peeled toward the shadowy infant, whispers snaked like vines through the crowd, winding tighter around Alara's already fragile existence. Margaret took a breath, grounding herself amidst the uproar. What if it's not what we think? She pleaded, feeling the weight of the room's judgment pressing against her chest. What if this child isn't cursed? What if she is something we have yet to understand? Laughter broke through the tension like thunder. It was cold, cutting, and devoid of warmth. You would defend a creature that crawled from the darkness? The same villager retorted, voice laced with contempt. You speak of understanding when you see what she truly is? You're all blinded by fear. Margaret shouted, heart racing. A child is a child. Even one born from shadows can be saved. But as she spoke, she felt the eyes of the crowd narrowing, judgments sharpening. Her own thoughts echoed her fears. What did she know? This whatever this was felt dark and menacing. Could she really stand against the force of the village's anger? What horrors might they unleash? Ilara's eyes glimmered with unshed tears. She whispered, trembling. The legends her voice faltered, and Margaret's heart twisted. Was everyone trapped in some ancient cycle, doomed to repeat the sins of their ancestors? The storm outside raged, shaking the very walls. Suddenly, a crack of lightning illuminated the room, casting an eerie light. The child's shadow twisted as if reaching out, yearning for acceptance or perhaps something darker. Who shall be the first to cast judgment? A voice rang out, eerily calm against the chaos. An elder stepped forward, lifting a gnarled finger. In the fractured light, he looked otherworldly, eyes glimmering with ancient knowledge. We must decide. This ends now. Abomination or blessing? The words hung in the air, suffocating, a chasm between life and death. Margaret's heart raced. Could she stand by and watch this child be condemned? She took a step forward, thoughts racing. Was there a chance to forge a new path? Wait! She cried, her voice raw and trembling. What if we could change the fate of this family, of this child? There must be something we can do. But the elder's response echoed ominously in her ears, sending shivers down her spine. Some paths are not meant to be altered. When darkness calls, only pain awaits. Tension crackled, pulsing with unyielding force. Margaret's thoughts spiraled. They had reached a precipice and it was about to crumble. What was darkness truly capable of when faced with the innocent? As her heart pounded, she realized, could they change the darkness, or was it already too late? The storm howled once more, and Margaret could sense the shadowy truth hidden just beyond reach. What lay ahead felt more sinister than anything she had ever faced. And in that swirling tempest of despair, a terrifying question remained: would she hold fast or let the shadows claim her too? The air thickened, suffocating, as the villagers bristled with expectation and fear. Eyes darted towards Margaret, gauging her readiness to challenge the relentless tide of anger. They whispered curses beneath their breath, hands clutching rosaries or babies as if they were talismans against whatever darkness lurked in that room. The flicker of candlelight reflected the desperation swirling in Margaret's chest, mingling with the crack of thunder from outside, making her heart drum a fearful rhythm. Decide! The elder commanded, a voice clear as glass yet heavy with authority, and in that moment, the weight of history settled like lead on Margaret's shoulders. Every heart in the room raced, each breath a silent prayer, a plea for absolution. Will we condemn or save? Margaret felt the shadows curling around her, curling tighter with every passing second. She looked to Ilara, whose eyes were wide with panic, and the shadowy form of the child on the bed. It stirred, the darkness in which it seemingly thrived mimicking the chaos in the room. We need to understand, she urged with all her might, searching for anyone who might echo her sentiment. I've read the old texts. They speak of balance, of the power contained within the shadows. What if this child holds that power? But it may destroy us. Another villager cried, voice rising above the whispers. It's a harbinger of doom. The jeering surged forward again, and Margaret felt a sinking feeling grow. Fear washed over her, she could feel its cold fingers wrap around her throat. The elder's features hardened. You seek a path of darkness, child, he replied, his tone quiet but resonant. You misunderstand the nature of this choice. It is not merely about saving a child, it is about preserving the very fabric of our lives against ancient terror. Margaret's determination faltered. If ancient terrors truly lurked in the shadows, cradled in this child's fragile form, what awful truths might she unwittingly awaken by standing up for it? She swallowed, bitterness crawling up her throat. Yet the urge to defend Ilara, to scream that the child deserved a chance, burned brighter. Let me give me one night with her, Margaret blurted out, the words spilling forth as though conjured by a force greater than her own fear. Let me find out what she is. What power she holds. A ripple of outrage coursed through the crowd, panic igniting like wildfire. The elder's face morphed into a mask of deep disdain, his gnarled finger waving like a heavy curtain cloaking the impending doom. A foolish request. You tempt the fates. A deep rumble of thunder echoed, shaking the floors beneath them. Perhaps it is fate we need to tempt. Margaret shouted back, ignoring the lump that grew in her throat. Perhaps the child is a part of something greater than our fear. The elder paused, his gaze piercing through her. The silence that followed was a taut string, ready to snap under pressure. The villagers looked poised to erupt in chaos, and amidst the brewing storm, Margaret locked onto Alara's wide, frightened eyes. A crack. The sound split the air as lightning struck just outside, illuminating the room in a blinding flash. For an instant, the child's shadow shifted, seeming more defined against the wall, reaching, stretching. What kind of mother would plead for darkness? Someone scoffed, shaking hands gripped the edge of the bed, and Margaret's heart thundered in her chest. I'm pleading for life. For a chance to understand. Ilara's eyes darted about the crowd, desperation creeping in. Don't let them hurt us, she murmured, her voice about to break. But Margaret knew the truth was far more complex than fear could acknowledge. You don't have to choose now, she breathed. Stepping forward with conviction, she took a deep breath. But understand this, I will fight for her. For the chance that there is some flicker of light in this darkness. As the crowd simmered with horror, a murmur began to pulse through the room, even as the storm raged outside. Who dared to oppose the collective fear? What would they unleash by provoking? The shadows, Ilara's hand trembled, curling over Margaret's. And what if it consumes you? Margaret smiled weakly, yet her heart pounded fiercely, louder than her thoughts. Then it's a fate we will accept together. The elder lifted his chin imperiously. Then so be it. One night a chance at salvation or madness. But know this, tomorrow, judgment shall fall. And if the darkness consumes you, the village shall not bear the weight of your folly. As the words settled in, heavy and foreboding, Margaret's heart raced with defiance. Could she truly survive the encroaching darkness? She turned to face the unsettling shadows and whispered to herself, determination igniting a small flame within. What kind of truth would reveal itself when faced with the night? And as time slipped away, she understood what awaited her in the gloom would challenge every notion she held dear. Would she emerge unscathed, or would the shadows indeed swallow her whole? The storm outside roared with a fury that mirrored the chaos within the village hall. Margaret felt the weight of each villager's gaze, their fear palpable, air thick with their belief that she was about to cross a line from which none could return. Ilara squeezed her hand tighter, the tension in her grip like a lifeline as fear coursed through both of them. One night, Margaret repeated, more to herself than anyone else. Just one night to understand. She turned to the child, its form half hidden, swathed in shadow, cradled like a fragile secret that could ignite chaos. What if understanding led to hope? What if the power buried within the darkness was something they could harness? Her heart hammered as she considered the possibilities. Listen. She called out, her voice rising above the distant rumble of thunder. What do we fear most? The unknown. What if, within that unknown, lies salvation? Her words stirred in the crowd, flickers of hope igniting amidst the panic. Or doom? A villager shouted back, and the unease in the room shifted. The murmurs grew louder, a cacophony of doubt slicing through her bold declaration. Margaret felt the sting of anger bubbling up. She spotted fear behind familiar faces that had once brought her comfort, echoes of a childhood spent playing among them now clouded by distrust. Look at her. Margaret gestured toward the child now stirring more actively. She is just a child. She deserves a chance to survive, doesn't she? The elder's brows knit together, and for a moment, Margaret believed she saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. But was it concern for the child or fear of losing control? Silence. The elder commanded, voice sharp and icy. You toy with forces that can destroy us, child. Isn't it you who toys with fear? Margaret shot back, her defiance igniting a spark of courage in her chest. Despite the uncertainty, she felt this was a battle worth fighting. And what would happen if you fail? Another villager asked, their voice trembling with the weight of concern. What if this child takes from us more than we can afford to lose? The question hung in the air, heavy and foreboding like the impending storm. Margaret felt her heart sink. She couldn't dismiss the truth in their words. Could she truly survive the risk of unleashing something dangerous? In that moment, doubt clawed at the edges of her resolve. But Alara's fierce whisper cut through her turmoil. Margaret, we can't let them decide her fate. Not now. With a nod, determination surged back into Margaret's veins. Then it's settled. One night with the child. And I will learn what she is or what she might become. The whispers swirled, caught between awe and horror. The storm outside intensified, rattling the windows as if urging them to reconsider. But Margaret stood firm, compelled by a force deeper than fear. The elder sighed heavily, the weight of the decision settling back on him. You may have your night, but know this: if darkness descends upon us, it will not be my hands that bear the burden, but yours. A wave of silence washed over the room. Margaret sensed the tension around her. A fragile peace, or perhaps the calm before an inevitable storm, looming just beyond their reality. What awaited them at the witching hour? Would the shadows yield truths, or would they consume everything Margaret held dear? As the thunder roared again, and winds howled outside, she could sense a shift, a lurking presence beginning to unfurl. A chilling question nagged at her: what lay within that darkness, waiting for its moment to rise? Margaret's resolve grew steady as the storm outside raged. She turned back to the child, whose small figure seemed to pulse with an energy all its own. The flickering candlelight cast wild shadows across the hall's walls, whispering stories of fear and foreboding. A child. How could something so innocent evoke such dread? Alara stepped closer, her eyes shimmering with concern. What are you really hoping to find? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. There's more at stake than just our lives. I know, Margaret replied, feeling the sharpness of Alara's gaze meet her own. But isn't life built on understanding the unknown? If we don't try, we are already lost. The murmurs of the villagers grew fainter as storm sounds persisted, a haunting backdrop to her uncertain courage. She could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears, driving her impatience, her determination. Margaret's fingers trembled slightly as she reached out, brushing her hand against the fabric of the child's cloak. It was cold, as if a shadow had entwined itself within. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd when the child raised its head. Eyes gleamed like twin moons cutting through the night, haunting yet familiar. They met Margaret's gaze with an intensity that made her breath hitch. Every fear, every doubt she had struggled against collided within her. Was this child a savior or a harbinger of doom? Her name is Lyra, someone whispered from the back, an elderly woman whose face bore the marks of countless storms. It is said she came to us on a night much like this, from darkness itself. Lyra. Margaret tasted the name, a delicate thread weaving itself into her heart. She felt a strange connection, as if understanding could bridge a chasm too wide to measure. What if she is the key? Margaret pressed ahead, sensing the slightest shift in the villagers' expressions. What if we discover what lies inside her, not by fear, but by love? A rustle of uncertain whispers floated in the air, and Margaret took a step closer. We owe it to ourselves to explore the truth, she continued, determination lighting her features. I will stay with her tonight, and I will not be alone. Who else will join me? Silence stretched before her. Was she really asking for volunteers to enter the dark unknown? A hand shot up through the crowd. Alara. I will, she said fiercely, her eyes aflame. Together. Whatever happens, we face it as one. Fools. The elder bellowed, his voice cutting through. You know nothing of what you invite. The shadows have a hunger, and you stand at the threshold. The challenge hung between them, heavy with threat. Margaret felt her stomach twist but stood firm. Could they even afford this journey? As she searched the faces around her, she saw those who had once been allies, now caught between their loyalty and their dread. Yet hope stirred, breathing new life into the room. With hearts racing, they formed a circle around Lyra, casting away fear as the storm outside raged on. The air pulsed with tension. Tonight we'll learn who she is, Margaret declared, resolution spilling from her. And who we are, before it's too late. But just then, a loud crack of thunder erupted, shaking the walls of the hall. The lights flickered as shadows danced, and Margaret felt a shiver race down her spine. The calm had shattered, and she sensed that the true trial was about to begin. What was about to unfold in that room? In the pitch of night, whispers of the past swirled around them, promising revelations that could alter the very fabric of their lives. Would the child prove a beacon of hope, or be the source of their undoing? Margaret drew a sharp breath, bracing for the answers as an ominous silence fell. What would unravel when the clock struck midnight? Would they be ready to face the truth lurking in Lyra's shadows? The air grew thick with a foreboding tension as the last echo of the thunder faded into an unsettling stillness. The candlelight flickered, sputtering against the encroaching darkness, casting long, eerie shadows that slithered across the room like searching spirits. Margaret's heart raced, each beat hammering against her ribs, drowning out the whispered doubts that crept in from the corners of her mind. Lyra remained still, her eyes, two glimmering orbs, seemed to absorb the energy of the room, weighing their intent like an ancient judge. Margaret could feel the warmth of the villagers pressing against her, yet the chill emanating from the child widened the gulf of uncertainty. Let us begin, Margaret said, more to herself than to anyone else, trying to drown out the tremor in her voice. She glanced at Ilara, whose determined nod offered a flicker of solidarity. But still, fear hung heavily in the air, a palpable entity pulsing with the expectancy of the unknown. Lyra Margaret knelt down until their eyes were level, searching for a connection, any sign of the child's true nature beneath the mystical facade. Can you tell us why you came here? What is it that you need? The child's gaze remained unwavering, as if contemplating not just her words but the very fabric of Margaret's soul. The villagers leaned forward, hanging on the precipice of the moment, breaths collectively held in a knot of anticipation. As the candlelight flickered, something shifted in the shadows, an almost imperceptible movement that sent a shiver rippling through the group. We have nothing to fear, Margaret pressed on, attempting to quell the growing unease. We are here for you. But as her words settled, a sudden chill coursed through the room, causing everyone to shudder involuntarily. Ilara scooted closer, her eyes reflecting a flicker of apprehension. What if she doesn't know? What if her arrival is a sign of something darker? Before Margaret could respond, Lyra's lips parted slightly. An eerie silence filled the void left behind. Her voice, barely more than a whisper, emerged, a sound like wind through the trees. They seek the light. The words gripped Margaret like a vice. Who? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Who seeks the light? Lyra's eyes narrowed, shifting to the window where lightning brightened the darkened sky. The shadows, they whisper of a bloodline, a power that lies hidden. They come for it and they will not stop. Gasps erupted from the crowd, fear flooding their expressions. The flickering candles threatened to go out entirely, casting the room into darkness even as their light struggled stubbornly to survive. Margaret felt sweat trickling down her back, a bead of cold dread. Power? What do you mean? Ilara leaned forward, her voice quavering yet insistent. What power is this? Lyra's gaze hung heavy with an ancient burden, her small hands balled into fists at her sides. To wield it, one must embrace the dark. Only through challenges can they find the truth. Only mother and child can defeat what is to come. The weight of her words settled upon them like a thick fog that left all who heard them gasping for clarity. Margaret felt her heart lurch. What challenges? What do we need to do? Before Lyra could answer, the ground beneath them trembled, a low rumble that seeped through the stone walls, vibrating with a life of its own. The candles flickered violently, fighting against the surge of energy that enveloped them. Was this the storm itself, or something far worse? Suddenly, a piercing scream sliced through the tension, echoing from the depths of the hall. The sound sent a shockwave through everyone's hearts. Eyes turned towards the darkened hallway, uncertainty blending with rising panic. "Stay together!" Margaret shouted instinctively, as limbs began to shake, the terror of the unknown clawing through her resolve. But as they huddled closer, the shadows seemed to swirl around them, whispering secrets of their past, speaking promises of the future. "What is happening?" Elara gasped, clutching Margaret's arm as if it were a lifebuoy in a sea of chaos. "I don't know." Margaret shouted, rage boiling her fear into something sharp and fierce. "But we will face this together." Yet deep down, a gnawing question lingered: would they all emerge unscathed? The storm outside raged on, drowning out the last flicker of hope as darkness closed in around them. What truth awaited them in that suffocating void? Would love prove to be a shield, or the downfall that shattered them all? The scream echoed like a monstrous roar, filling every crevice of the old hall with untamed fear. Margaret's heart raced as she tightened her grip on Elara's arm, the tendons straining against hot waves of panic. She darted her eyes around the room, searching for the source, but the shadows clung tightly to their secrets, lurking just out of sight. "Who was that?" Elara breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know," Margaret stammered, the chill brushing against her neck like icy fingers. It felt as if time had slowed, each heartbeat resonated in her ears while uncertainty twisted her gut. Lyra remained still, the child's expression morphing into something inexplicably serene. "They are coming," she said softly, her voice almost a lullaby amidst the chaos. "You must choose." "Choose what?" Margaret spat, frustration crackling in the air. "We don't have time for riddles." But as if in response to the tension, the air shifted. The candles sputtered wildly, the shadows grew bolder, lengthening and reaching. A cold gust whipped through the hall, quelling the flickering flames and plunging the group into an abyss of darkness. Gasps rose from the villagers as a shivering silence settled. Margaret felt frozen, every instinct screaming at her to run, yet she was anchored in place by something much deeper than fear. The power Lyra spoke of stirred something primal within her, a mixture of curiosity and dread. "What do we choose?" She repeated more softly, searching the child's eyes for clarity, for answers. Lyra's gaze turned inward as if listening to a voice that only she could hear. "The light lies within," she murmured, her expression distant. "You must confront the shadows, or they will consume you." A heavy silence followed, thickening the air with impending doom. Just then, the haunting scream pierced through the darkness again, reverberating like shattering glass. Margaret's heart dropped as she recognized the voice. It was a familiar cry, tinged with anguish. It was Eloise, the baker's wife, a woman who shared baking tips and stories over the years, now sounding utterly lost in despair. "Eloise!" Margaret yelled, desperation cutting through the fog of fear. "We have to help her." Elara's eyes widened, and she shook her head. "Margaret, wait. What if it's a trick?" "No, we can't leave her." Margaret insisted, the need to save her friend pushing her forward into the tumult of shadows. She knew the risks, yet the bond of sisterhood was stronger than fear. As they stepped closer to the hall's entrance, a chilling wind howled, swirling around them like a tempest. The shadows twisted and turned, elongating into grotesque shapes that clawed at their minds, whispering sins and secrets. A figure emerged from the darkness, a silhouette of a woman, disheveled and frantic, her face obscured by dark hair that whipped wildly like tendrils of smoke. "Help!" Eloise cried, her voice laced with terror. "They want to let me go." "Eloise! What is happening?" Margaret shouted, her heart racing, but before Eloise could respond, from the depths of the darkness rose ominous figures, shrouded in shadows. Eyes glowing with hunger, they extended their hands toward the group. Margaret's heartbeat thudded louder, a drumbeat of urgency. We cannot let them take her. She stepped forward, the fear igniting a fire in her bones. With a determined breath, she reached out, her hands trembling as electric energy zapped through her fingertips. It was overwhelming, yet empowering. Stay behind me. She called, the words a fierce declaration, her voice now resolute. As Margaret inched closer to the shadows, the air crackled with tension, drawing nearer with each pulse of her heart. A choice loomed before her, the light, the dark, and the bitter truth hidden within. What would the shadows reveal, and could the power hidden within them be harnessed to save them all? Would she emerge from this, or lose everything she loved to the abyss? Margaret breathed deeply, every instinct warning her to retreat, while her heart pulled her closer to the chaotic shadows that writhed around Eloise. The woman's cries clawed at her chest, igniting fierce courage in place of fear. She could see Eloise now, her face smeared with dirt and despair, eyes wide with terror. Please. They want my soul. Eloise cried, her voice breaking. Something invisible and suffocating loomed over her, making it hard for Margaret to breathe. The other villagers shuffled uneasily, some visibly trembling, while others clutched at one another, their faces pale as ghosts. No! Margaret shouted, stepping forward. We'll get you out. Lyra's whispered warning echoed in her mind, mingling with the cold dread that seeped into her bones. The light, the dark, it felt as if the very foundations of her beliefs were being tested. What was hidden in the shadows? What truth awaited her? Shadows expanded, engulfing the room, casting her into a nightmarish realm. The ominous figures twisted, revealing themselves as dark reflections of the villagers, teasing out their hidden fears and regrets. One moved toward Alara, a grotesque imitation of her own face, whispering secrets laced with venom. Margaret. Alara's voice shattered the air, sharp and laced with panic. It knows us. It knows our sins. Margaret's stomach dropped. Could it be true? Were they too late to save Eloise? Hold on to hope. Margaret roared, forcing herself to focus. She fought back tears, clenching her fists, feeling the heat of determination as she reached into the core of her being. In that moment, she knew she had to confront these shadows or become lost within them. Together. She shouted, turning to the villagers. We can't let it win. We must embrace our truths, or we will be devoured. Stand with me. One by one, the villagers stepped closer, though their spirits wavered. They looked at each other, hesitant yet desperate. The horrors of their past unfolded in whispers that danced around them, but Margaret's fiery resolve began to ignite an ember within their hearts. Lend me your strength. She cried, raising her hands as electric energy crackled around her. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from Margaret's fingertips, pushing back the shadows that clawed at them. The dark forms shrieked, recoiling as the light spread, illuminating the room and revealing the truth. Margaret's breath hitched as she realized their shadows were manifestations of their guilt, fears, and suppressed emotions. They weren't just attacking Eloise, they were exposing everyone's secrets. Look! She urged the villagers. It's us. It's our own darkness we face. Eloise wept, terror still clinging to her, but Margaret reached toward her with a steady hand. Fight it, Eloise. You are stronger than this. With each encouraging word, the shadows began to falter. The whispers grew fainter, replaced by murmurs of courage and resolve. As the villagers joined hands with Margaret, the light pulsed brighter. Confronting their own fears, they fought against the consuming shadows, but just as victory nearly slipped within grasp, the room trembled violently. A monstrous figure emerged, shadowy and grotesque, eclipsing their efforts. It loomed, a storm of darkness with a laugh that chilled the air. You think you can overcome me? It sneered, eyes glimmering with malice. Heart pounding, doubt crept into Margaret's mind. Could they truly rise against something so vile? The energy surrounding them flickered, uncertain in the face of the unimaginable force before them. Could they unlock the true power of light and confront this final nightmare? Margaret's heart raced as she faced the figure, a riptide of fear mingling with a desperate fight to protect everything she loved. One thing was clear, the real battle was just beginning. The storm outside raged on, echoing the chaos that unfolded within the village hall. Shadows twirled and writhed, darker than the pitch of night, as if laughter and bitterness danced hand in hand. Margaret stood firm, her heart racing, the villagers' hands clutching hers with an intensity that anchored her. They wouldn't let fear fracture their bond. Together, she whispered fiercely, determination burning in her chest. The monstrous figure loomed above them, a tempest of dread with a hunger that seemed insatiable, eager to devour every flicker of light. As the shadows threatened to eclipse their resolve, Margaret stepped forward, unwavering. Even in the face of darkness, we choose light. The declaration surged through her like wildfire. The energy that had flickered from her fingertips ignited into a brilliant beam, illuminating the hall, exposing the grotesque form that had risen from their collective fears. "You think light can save you?" the figure hissed, each syllable thick with malice. "Yes," Margaret shouted, voice strong and resolute. "We learn from our shadows. We own our truths." Around her, the villagers gathered closer, fortifying their connection. "We will not let you consume us." They shouted in unison, their voices a growing swell of courage, defiance taut in the air. The shadows recoiled, the force from the light weaving through the darkness, hitting walls and corners, illuminating the hearts that had once felt so burdened by past sins. "Fight!" Ilara cried, echoing Margaret's fervor. "Each of us holds a piece of the light within. Our love, our hope." With each word, the shadows twisted. They flickered as the depths of fear that had once gripped the villagers began to unravel, releasing souls caught in darkness. A flicker of light in every heart glowed brighter than despair. Eloise stepped forward, shaking yet resolute. "We cannot run from what we are. This darkness is part of us, but we will no longer let it control what we become." Her words rang out clear, breaking chains that had bound them for so long. Margaret felt pride swell within her as she watched the villagers raise their heads, hearts daring to challenge the shadows that had long held them captive. "Channel your truths," she screeched, drawing strength from each flicker of enlightenment that surged from them as they lit up the room. The monstrous figure screeched in agony, shadows retracting, twisting like smoke, recoiling from the united force before it. With each pulse of light, the atmosphere shifted. The storm outside howled as if it too was alarmed by the power unleashed within the hall. "Remember," Margaret urged, grasping Ilara's hand tightly, feeling the warmth spread between them. "We bring our fears to the light, not to destroy them, but to cleanse our past." The villagers responded, voices rising in a chorus of memories and acceptance. "We will not be bound by our heritage. We embrace our past to heal our future." Light erupted, cascading in a brilliant wave as the darkness flailed helplessly, shrieking with rage. The shadows wrapped around Margaret, but instead of fear, she felt a burning clarity, a tapestry of pain woven into the fabric of her being that she had now had the courage to confront. Suddenly, with a cataclysmic roar, the monstrous figure began to disintegrate, a shower of darkness evaporating like mist. The air grew lighter, the storm outside receded. In the profound silence, a hum vibrated through the hall, reverberating with the energy of their shared determination. The villagers stood leaning against one another, emotions splayed wide, relief, love, and solidarity filling their hearts, bright and alive. Lyra's form flickered as equilibrium settled, her eyes meeting Margaret's with a knowing glow. The whispers of the past flickered against the nullified shadows, not obliterated but transformed, a powerful lesson embedded in their breaths. "You held us at the edge of despair, yet your love carved a passage to hope," Lyra murmured, her voice echoing softly but profoundly. Margaret felt tears sting her eyes, knowing they had faced darkness, conquered it, not simply for themselves but for the generations to come. They had turned fear into light, despair into strength. This transformation would carry through the village. "In unity lies our salvation," she finally whispered, finally feeling liberated from the chains of ancient burdens. As they stepped into the calm after the storm, the villagers exhaled deeply, their fears tethered behind them. Moving forward, they would share stories, embrace laughter, and love openly, forever overcoming shadows with the light of their truth and acceptance. As dawn broke outside, golden rays washing over the village, Margaret knew their journey wasn't entirely over, but today had laid the groundwork for a brighter tomorrow. Pulling Alara tightly, she whispered, "Together, we face all that is yet to come." And in that moment, the world felt almost sanctified, a vibrant pulse of potential, alive and raw, a new beginning blossoming from the ashes of what had been. Now, don't wait any longer. This is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories waiting to be unveiled. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this exhilarating ending. And for the love of stories, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together, let us create a community that embraces the light.